record.
Thanks for the reminder. Okay. So Paul has a lead that came in. They are from out of province from where he lives. So he's in Ontario. They're from Alberta, I believe. And they're planning on buying a second home that they can use as a cottage, but also have the ability to Airbnb it out potentially. They do have a pretty decent budget for this second property as well. So he had spoke to this individual the other day, had a great conversation, learned a little more about what they'd be looking for, also discovered that they're going to be back in the area come October to kind of start looking through property and going to take a look. And so, he is curious more or less, what should he be doing in the meantime? I don't know if you got my email, Paul, but one of the recommendations I said is she liked a listing, or she liked a couple listings, right? So it's kind of reaching out to figure out what was it about those properties that she liked, that she wanted to save them. And then you can also say, so as long as you're starting to receive these properties, to, like the ones that if they're still available when you are here, that we can go take a look. I also suggested as well, because she's looking for, waterfront or something with a pool, is to create a secondary search that, because one is focused on the pool, right? But if she's looking for something in that price range, if it's a little bit less than she can afford to put a pool in, right? Not limiting, and it's also harder to find a lakefront property with a pool, right? So if it could be limiting the results in there. So, try to create a couple different searches that could produce listings or properties that may be suitable on or off the lake. But if they don't have a pool, then at least they have the ability to put a pool in, should they really wish to do so. Like if that's a game changer, like is that a must have? It must have a pool, or are they willing to put the pool in?
I think a big piece of this scenario, it's so easy to forget that they have an expectation. And especially when it's a second home, there's really no urgency to make you spend that money. But we as realtors have our sales hat on, and we're trying to figure out how can we make the sale. But they're thinking in a completely different realm of what the process looks like. And the more we can bring our thought process to their thought process and bring that together, that's what you can be doing in the meantime, because the more we know what's in their heads and what they're thinking and the conversations they're having at the dinner table, the more that helps us to know what to do. Because they may not be ready to look at homes or in homes or process of eliminate yet, but we send them properties. We're like, hey, what about this one? What about this one? What about this one? And it comes across as pushy. But the other person that's ready to look at homes, they're like, oh my gosh, send me more. So it's very important to understand where they are and meet them where they are, instead of trying to figure out what I should be doing, because it's going to be different for every buyer, because every buyer is going to be in a different place. Every buyer is going to have more of an urgency to spend that money. And, if it's not a 1031, I'm so sorry, my dog.
Try not to laugh. I can hear. I don't have those things in my house for that exact reason.
But I have her because she's a puppy and she commands attention, as you can tell.
Like giving a kid a drum set.
He's like, hey, I'd rather be jumping at you, or I could be like speaking my toy.
There you go.
So we do quickly forget, because we're thinking about, are we doing everything we're supposed to be doing? Are we doing everything right? There's no right or wrong way. It's what do they want? And that's why I always talk about in my trainings, ask them what you can be doing for them. Ask them what's most important for them to learn about. How well do they know the area? Do they want information on, and this just came up over the last week because we were down at our beach condo. I like to hang out where the locals hang out. Yes, I don't live there. That's not my primary residence, but I think I'm a local, right? I don't go there just to go on a beach vacation. I go there because we have a residence there. So, do they want to know things like that on where the locals hang out, where the best seafood is, where the best steaks are, where the best gym is, the best yoga studio? We forget all that because we're so focused on the house.
Mm-hmm.
But what about their lifestyle? Find out what kind of lifestyle they want, and that helps to create where they're going to be as well with a lifestyle, because every
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood carries a different lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And then also, like with the area, Paul, being where it is right around the Blue Mountains, and you're looking at that aspect for the Airbnb aspect. Obviously, if they wanted a four season Airbnb, not just the summer because it's on the lake, but it's all the way up in Meaford or all the way up further, that could, hinder the possibilities of actually renting it out 4 seasons if the person has to drive, an hour to get to the ski hill. Whereas if they can get something that's closer to the ski hill because that's what people are looking for in the winter months, then, it's kind of shifting it. So it's educating them on that area, where the tourism is, where people tend to go and why, and what times of the year, so that they can make an educated decision when they're there on which property is best suited for their ultimate goal with the home.
100%. There's a lot more complexity involved in educating somebody on an investment of that capacity,
Mm-hmm.
and really understanding and knowing what is their short-term and long-term plan. Because some people just want to rent it out for a few years and then take it as a primary residence and not rent it out anymore. What does that piece look like? What is that return on their investment? What are the rentals going for? How upgraded? Because I know at the beach, depending on the upgrades is depending on how much you can get for the property.
Mm-hmm.
If you're completely changed over and upgraded, you're going to get more because people want to stay in something that's more dated in today than they are something that's older. You can still rent it out. You can rent anything out, but
less amount of money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point. Not knowing the area. Is it a place that someone's going to be for season? If they choose to have a 4 season, maybe they want, well, we have snowbirds here, right? Like everybody goes south for probably from like November to February is like the prime snowbird season. But where we are in Gulf Shores, Alabama, that's not really snowbird because it's not as hot there as it is in the deeper South Florida. So we're not truly a 4 season. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. I think it's just
really. You got a great lead. What's that price range?
I think they're looking up to $2 million.
That's a nice one.
Yeah. So it's, I wish I could afford a $2 million secondary home.
I know. I'm like, I couldn't afford a $2 million primary home.
Out of province. So it's out of province. It means they have to fly across the country to get there. Right. So but they obviously know the area enough that they would want to put their money there as well. Right. Or they venture there enough that it makes sense to do that as well. Right.
Yeah.
So they could be one of the people that Airbnb something out. So they see the potential, right, of what, how much they're paying to go there for a week, right, versus what they could be receiving if someone's staying there for a week. So,
well, and this goes with any lead that you convert and you're having conversations within your dashboard. Just think about their lifestyle and their time frame. And a lot of times the questions I get in the trainings are, how can I get them over the fence? How can I get them to purchase? You can't, right? It's all about timing. And unfortunately, our timing is never their timing. We want to make money every day. We want to be sitting to sell on the table every day, which there's possibility to do that, right? But you just have to find the people and meet them where they are in their place of the process and respect that. Because if you don't respect where they are, they're not going to want to use you because they feel that, right? They feel that you're trying to be too pushy. And that's where, again, it all comes down to asking those questions. If the absolute perfect property came on the market, how soon would you be willing to move forward with something? because a lot of people talk, but when it gets time to pulling the trigger, then it's like, right, that hesitation. So it's asking those questions and going through that process to alleviate that hesitation of that buyer's remorse when it gets to really be that time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people know what they're looking for, but there's quite a few people that really don't.
Yeah. Or they don't consider various factors, right? They, it's kind of forget some things that might actually be important. And then that creates them to rethink their whole criteria of what they're looking for.
And we
right?
don't have to be a seasoned agent to ask the right
Mm,
questions. It's truly, I can't teach or train common sense, but it's truly common sense. Think about if they have 2 children and they're looking for a 1 bathroom. Come on now, right? Common sense tells you you have 2 children and 3 of you all are women. Do you really think you can live with 1 bed or with 1 bathroom? Right? Yeah. I mean, that's like a really that wouldn't happen very often, but you get my point. It's sometimes it's important for the children to have the Jack and Jill. Is it important for each child to have their own bathroom? Is it important for each child to possibly have their own access to a bathroom? So you can really start opening that dialogue with the different styles of homes and really get an idea of getting to know them.
Yeah. Well, and you're educating them in the process, right? So you're adding value at that time, regardless of where they're at. They could have just jumped online for the first time, and you're sharing this knowledge with them and adjusting their perspective on things slightly, and they're going to value that more than you just asking what their criteria is and going with it.
And I'll tell you where I learned that. You have a buyer that wants to go see 10 homes. You line it up, and it takes you a day. You get to 1 home, and they're like, oh, I don't even need to go in that home. It's got da-da-da-da in the backyard. Why didn't I ask that question? Then you get to another home. Oh, it's on a dirt road. I'm not even thinking about dirt road, right? So you wasted time of setting up because it's not fun setting up, trying to time the showings. Because you're thinking, okay, well, I'll leave this much time for this one. It's going to take me this long to get there. So I'll schedule the timing for this one. If you're scheduling 10 showings, it's like, it's a lot of work. Yeah. It's a lot of work. So it's all about the process of eliminating. So is there things that they're truly not willing to budge on and not willing to accept in a home? Process of eliminate that. And that's all asking those questions. And that all comes down to your time for your money. The more homes you show, the less money you make, period. So it was a game for me. How few homes could I show a buyer before they actually signed a contract? Especially in times right now where we're having changes. I don't know what's happening in Canada. Here, we are seeing homes sit on the market a little bit longer. And I think a lot of what's happened is sellers are overshooting the market because they're used to what it used to be. So they're overpricing and thinking, and then they don't get showing. So now it's to their detriment. Interest rates are kind of up, but fluctuating. When I say up, they're still not like stupid.
Yeah. They're about pre-COVID. Right. Yeah. Like they're not, I think everyone just got used to having these really, really low interest rates, which were never going to last in the first place. And so they're having a hard time with the adjustment of things going back to normal. I know in Canada, though, I think there might be, there's at least one more hike coming, maybe a second one as well before the new year.
So. And are you all seeing it affecting the prices?
We're seeing, we're seeing where I am anyway. The prices are coming down for sure, 100%. They are coming down. You still see the odd listing that they're hoping, and you're like, you're out to lunch. You're not going to get that.
Yep.
But hey, you can let their properties sit there for as long as they want, I suppose. It's not affecting me, but.
Well, and since I've been in real estate in 2005, literally nothing has ever changed in the regards of if the interest rates are low, the prices are high. If the interest rates are higher, the prices are lower.
Yeah.
When you know that across the table, it takes a while for it to like shake out and make that adjustment to where that monthly payment is comfortable.
Yeah.
But why I always say it's always about the monthly payment, not the price of the property and not the interest rate. What can you afford per month? Focus on the monthly payment. Do those properties meet your expectations? If this is the time for you to buy, that's all you need to worry about and look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it's not, if you're so worried about the interest rate, that might not be the time for you to buy. And that's how you get people past that. So I always ask them, would you, and it's very complex, because what is the perfect scenario? Would you rather buy a high price with a low interest rate, or a low interest rate with a high price? Or did I say the same thing twice? High interest rate, low price. That's what, you know, if it all comes down to the monthly payment, where does it shake out in the end? Now, obviously, if you have a low interest rate and a high payment, you might be able to afford to pay more on your mortgage per month and get rid of the mortgage payment, right? But the same thing goes with high interest rate, low price. It's all relative. It's what the mind says.
Yes.
So if you can help that person conceptualize that it's really just on paper, it really doesn't mean anything other than we have to have a formula to go by. Somebody has to charge something for you to buy a home, and the seller has to make money. So I think that's what it comes down to.
When it comes, no, absolutely. And you can almost always get a better interest rate if you're going through private lenders, like meaning not the big five, the national, the banks. If you're going through the independent mortgage brokers, they often, or credit unions often, offer lower interest rates, and often don't require stress tests. Do you guys stress test in Canada or in US?
No, we don't.
No.
No.
So they do stress tests where you, in order to get approved, they approve you at a certain, I think it's like 5, no, I can't remember, unless it fluctuates with the current rate. Oh, it's the rate plus 2. Okay. 2. Yeah. So it basically aligns you so that you are only getting approved. So should interest rates go up, you're still going to be able to afford your mortgage, obviously, unless it goes up higher than 2 points. So, but that's it. So even though you think you can afford it, the banks actually won't approve you for that. That's where sometimes using those independent mortgage agents or companies, brokers, or even the credit unions often don't require the stress test. They're going at today's rate.
Interesting. So stress test, even if it's a conventional, where the interest rate won't affect the like a conventional 30-year fixed.
I think so. Test? Yeah, it doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as it's through a bank, you have to go through the stress
Interesting.
Test.
And I did know that about Canada. Okay, that's really interesting, Cynthia. Which it's protecting the banks from foreclosures, really.
It is, to an extent, except for when the rates were down to like 1.6 or something. When you're looking at that, 2 points higher that they were getting approved at was still lower than today's rate. Right? So most of them, they're not going to be up for renewal for another few years anyways, 3 to 5 years anyway. But yeah, that's where you might see down the road is now they're back into a normal interest rate versus this really low COVID rate. Right. So that might be
is that a common known with buyers, even first-time home buyers that are looking online? Do they know about the stress test?
If they've spoken to a mortgage representative, then yes, they would.
But if they haven't,
the agent,
I think we want to buy a house. And
no, it's not common knowledge. It's not common knowledge unless you're doing that, right? So, and I think that's also where it may have hindered. I've spoken to somebody else in the past, and they were moving from Vancouver, coming up to my area, had, they sold a home that was worth well more than what they were buying here, and literally thought, oh, well, this is easy. Our income hasn't changed. We just sold a house. You have this down payment. Mortgaging is going to be fine. It's going to be easy. And they had to jump through hoops to make it happen because of that stress test, because of the additional anticipation. They never thought that it would actually have that much effect on what they were looking to borrow. So the deal almost didn't happen. And they were almost positive for themselves that it would have because of the sale.
So that stress test is really what's going to control what they're approved for.
Exactly. So it's not going based on what the advertised 5% is. It's going as so it's a plus 2 point. It's now at 7.25%. You have to get approved based on that interest rate.
Well, I think that would make the conversation even easier with the buyers, as far as, because if interest rates don't even really truly get that high, you're so protected and you kind of know what to expect.
Yeah.
It's more setting an expectation.
Yeah. And there's so many different mortgage products out there that, my mortgage, my price, even though the interest rates are changing, I'm like a smart flat. I don't even know what it's called. So basically just the amount that's going towards principal is changing, but my monthly payment isn't changing. I'm sure it might change if it hits a certain amount that, okay, now you can't even cover the interest. Then, it'll obviously they'll ask for more money from me. But until then, it's just the less is going on the principal. It is a variable. It's like a smart variable though, I think.
Yep. Well, and
my rates don't change. Really, I don't know.
Well, variables can be really good. And that's where, and I think these conversations set yourself apart as well with buyers, because what happened back when we had all of the foreclosures, buyers were getting themselves into that situation of maxing out, because they think in their mind, I'm going to go in, I want a 30-year fixed, and my mortgage payment is going to be, let's just say $2,000 a month. So when they go in there with a 30-year fixed, $2,000 a month, they see a new construction and they want this upgrade, that upgrade, this basement, this elevation, this lot premium. And now that $2,000 a month went to $2,800. And the builder would say, well, I can get you at $2,000 a month. Let's just do an ARM, the adjustable rate mortgage. So to your point, the very beginning of the loan, there's no money going to the principal, and you're paying the $2,000. So had people been paying the $2,500 or the $2,800 on that ARM, they would have been so aggressive on that principal, because you can put more on your principal at the beginning of a loan on an adjustable rate and keep your rate down. So even if interest rates do adjust, you've paid so much on your principal, it's not going to make that big of a difference. But Mr. Buyer, if you don't feel that you're good with money and that you will never put a little extra on your mortgage, then stay with the fixed.
Yeah.
Stay with the fixed. But I know even with I'm only paying like an extra $50 a month. And it's making a tremendous difference because it's all directly on the principal.
Yeah.
And those are things that buyers just don't think about. And, moving into higher interest rates, this is where, because we're in a market shift, this is the best place to we're going to start seeing sellers paying closing costs again. So take that a step further and have them buy down the mortgage, put money towards the points and bring that interest rate down. And that's really finding the seller that's going to be in that position to be able to contribute that money to get that rate down. And that's the beautiful thing about the market adjusting, because it has sucked the last couple of years, because we as buyer agents had zero control to protect our buyers. We had to really help them to understand our job is, yes, to protect you as a homeowner, but if you want this house, you're gonna have to overpay for it. And it was really difficult for a lot of buyer agents, because we didn't want people overpaying. We didn't want competition of $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. It's just not right.
No.
But it was what it was.
Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly.
No,
Marcy,
Marcy, this is not just about interest rates. It's where the conversation led us. What would you like to talk about, Marcy? I'm all about conversion. We're out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Interest rates.
Yeah. I was gonna like input something, and I totally like was listening to you, and then lost my thought. So it'll come to me. It'll come to me. It's on something. Oh, I know what it was. So with the crazy market I know in BC, in British Columbia, because each province has their own rules, they are talking about introducing a 72-hour clause, 72 hours for a buyer to back out of a contract with no repercussions. So they might be tabling that, but it was for this crazy market where people were overpaying or not getting the home inspections done. They end up with whatever. So it gives them, it might be 48 hours. It gives them a little time to kind of, sit back or get that inspection done or get something done, and decide 100% if they want to move forward with it. Right. But now that the market's kind of settled, things are kind of, do we introduce this now or do we kind of wait on it? Because I can see a lot of people taking advantage of it. There's a lot of gray area that would need to be, addressed beforehand. Because you could see, a buyer putting an offer on 5 different properties, getting all 5 of them, and then go, which one do I want? Right. So tying up different homes and taking away from others. So it could create a nightmare in some situations for sure. Buyer protection, maybe, like when you're in a crazy market and you're just throwing a number at it and you're waiving any kind of
inspections,
anything like that, right? Just to get the home. So I think that's more of what it's geared towards, but I think they're going to have to figure out how to do it that people won't abuse it for sure.
That's the first I've heard that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if there is the option to waive that right,
Yes.
So that's how buyers would get aggressive again, is I'm just going to waive the right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's enough fun. They're just going to waive that. And then they're putting them back in that same predicament, themselves back in that same predicament, I guess, of the risks involved of doing that. So now, does anyone have any additional questions or topics to discuss? Things like that. Now, if anyone doesn't ask a question, so I was talking to Tara about this yesterday, or I mentioned it, brought it up, and so I'll kind of get your perspective on it as well. Otto had sent me a video, and I don't know if he's a coach or what it is, and it was his perspective on why when you're calling a lead back that they don't answer. Right. So we always have this, right? It comes up with a lot of people in here where they're like, I had what I thought was a really great conversation with someone, and we, agreed to a callback time. But when I call back, they don't answer. They don't answer. They don't answer. So they've ghosted them. Right. And so where this guy, his standpoint on that is, well, for one, as we are knowing and are learning more and more, is the buyers are actually starting their home searches a lot sooner in the process, from actual transaction dates. But also to achieve a higher answer rate, his suggestion is to go into all of those conversations as an educational standpoint. What point of value when I'm talking to this person of education and value and resources am I offering, so that when I am calling back, there's value that they're looking to receive, rather than me just calling me like, hey, how are the listings? Right? So do you find when you're reaching out to leads or trying to call them back that there's a difference from, some conversations where they're maybe not as educational kind of standpoint, versus those that are more educational, where you have those discussions with someone where we're offering information, resources? Do you find a difference yourself when you're calling as to who answers and who doesn't answer on those return calls?
Well, it's fewer and fewer people are answering their phones anymore. I mean, it's just happening because your phone just white noise anymore. And literally, I think our phones are now used more to just call out than it is to accept calls, unless it's your kids, right? Unless it's family. But why it's so important when you have that first really good conversation that you set those expectations and let them know, I don't expect you to answer the phone whenever I call you back. It's like when you're up front and you solve the problem before it's a problem and just call a spade a spade. I don't expect you to answer the phone every time I call you back. Let me just ask you, if you don't answer the phone, how would you like me to follow up? Do you mind if I send you a text? I know things get busy in your world and I know I'm not a priority yet, but I just want to know that you're still there. So if you're talking about that in that initial conversation, and honestly, you're making light of it. You're kind of making a joke about it, but you're being very serious.
Yeah.
And then find out, when do you want me to call back? So if you're setting yourself up, you have a much higher chance of them answering the phone. So yes, in those conversations, when I tee them up like that, more chances than less, they answer the phone. And not only do they answer the phone, but they saved my phone number. And they answer the phone, hey, Beverly. So before you get off of that phone, say, hey, just do me a favor and save my number so that you know when I do call back. And so I always joke with them. I'm like, just save it as your realtor. Just Beverly, your realtor. And then they laugh, And I know how my fiance puts numbers in his phone. He categorizes them based on how if he meets them at a store or at a restaurant, he'll put the restaurant name in, or he'll put the store name in. So that then he's like, okay, because we go out to eat all the time, right? And he'll talk to and meet a bunch of servers and the chef and whatever. So when we go back to that restaurant, before we go to the restaurant, he types that number in as a contact in his phone and pulls up the names of the people that he met at the restaurant. So
because I can never remember people's names.
Yeah, I cannot remember people's names. It's horrible. Then we kind of have fun with it, right? We're like, I think it's such and such, and then he'll pull his notes up and like, yeah, we were both wrong. But yes, ask them to save your number, and ask them when do you want me to call you back? It's totally setting that expectation 100%.
Yeah. And if they don't answer, you just keep calling or chat. You can text them like, hey, you don't have to call me back. Just want to make sure you're good, or whatever your follow-up call was supposed to be about, right?
Yeah. And the most important piece, especially whenever you connect with somebody, and I'm just trying to think of a scenario, and I'll have one in my head because something's happened like right recently. All right, we just had a dog event here at the restaurant, and we were raising money for a nonprofit that helps families find their lost dog. Now, I met a lot of great people along that walk. If anything were to come up about dogs, about animals or whatnot, I'd be like, oh my gosh, hey, Megan, da, 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 da. Right? Our leads should be the same way. If you know that they have a like of something, a sports team, and the sports team wins and you notice the win, just identify that. Give them a text and say, go, da, da, da. I saw your team won. Or if you have any news on that, is taking things to a different level. Because we are going to have to, moving into the future of real estate, and I think that future is now, we have to be able to stand out differently than the average person just trying to convert a lead. That's not what it's about anymore. That's what everybody's doing. I'm paying for a lead. I'm trying to convert it. But where the rubber really meets the road is in that conversation. How much information are you getting from them, and how are you nurturing them? What does that nurture process look like? Because it's down to how many conversations can I have? And then out of those conversations, how many of those conversations are great? How many of those conversations can I take to the next level? And how many of those conversations can I take to the closing table? So it's not a matter of converting it. It's a matter of having the conversation and carrying it through to the closing table. But making things personal. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that, because that educational piece can come in a myriad of different facets, right?
Yes, but it's also like taking that extra bit of information. So even like going back at Paul's situation where you had that conversation is, okay, this is what you're looking for. And then taking that and offering a little bit of value. Okay, so this is why I might want to stay away from this area unless you're doing a direct waterfront because right? Yeah. So you're giving them something that you're building that trust in what you're offering, that they can rely on the information that you're providing them.
Yes. And do some digging on Airbnbs and see if you can dig up some information that they may not have at their fingertips. And I always look at those situations as, I remember one of my very first transactions. It was a for sale by owner that I made the appointment with, and I didn't ask the right questions. I show up at the appointment and it wasn't the actual seller. It was the brother of the seller. Like, oh, okay, whoopsie. But the brother had just moved into the area. He was renovating the home and he was looking for a home. He had a restoration company and he wanted to buy an old home, possibly historical, to restore and refurbish and live in. I went on a manhunt. And at that point, I had no clients. I had nothing going on. I didn't even have a lead gen then. So I had nothing to do other than, let me dive into the market and look at all of the old homes. So I would just plug in anything built prior to 1950. And I looked at every old home. I just started process of eliminating. And then I started looking and I would do drive-bys. And I'd be like, hey, John, what about this one? But I did my homework on it before I gave it to him. And then the ones that we would go look at, I was able to learn a lot about the homes, about restoration, about what could work, about what is a tear down and something that you could actually renovate. But it really, I don't know if I would have gotten his business had I been where I ended my business when I stepped out. Because I was able to do so much research and exhaust all of my time into that to really make it such an experience for him that he couldn't not use me.
Yeah.
So everything's relative to what you have on your plate. But this I can tell you, every single one of you that will be ever listening to this webinar, you have wasted time in your day. I promise you. Because we're not great at making best use of our time. And when we really start to make best use of our time, we end up having more time. So it's what's important to you. So when you start looking at your ideal client and the clients that you want to work with, that's where you can really shine and have fun, because that's where digging in and researching that gets really exciting. Because you're learning something in the process that you didn't know about. And then that's going to fuel you and teach you about Airbnbs. So now you've become the expert on the Airbnbs because you've put everything into this one client, whether they buy or not. Again, why I always say fall in love with the process and don't be attached to the outcome. Because there's a chance you exhaust all that time and effort into a buyer and they're like, oh, you know what? My husband died and I'm not going to buy now, right? Or my mom died and I'm going to be at least another year out because I got to worry about the estate now. Like shit happens to people that we have no control over. All we have control over is what we're doing. So it's finding out what it is you love and diving into it and learning and just peeling back the layers and educating. It's all about education, which is why it's always, what's your value proposition? Everyone's licensed today, and the average person knows 12 realtors. So why would they use you? And if you can't answer that question, that's a whole bigger problem, right? Just because we have a real estate license and because we can show homes and write contracts doesn't mean that people are just going to use us.
Yeah.
we have to really dig in and say, what is the benefit of a person using me versus any other realtor in my market? And that becomes your value proposition. And in mine, I did so much homework. Like, I did not take a buyer out until how I explained it. And I'm sure you've heard me say this before, Crystal, I was the nurse practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
I would take all your vitals and get to know exactly what your wants and needs are before we even hit the door running. I would pull up properties and we would process of eliminate. Okay, I would be on the phone, but that was before Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Zoom's a beautiful thing because you can just share your MLS, right? And look at all the pictures with your buyer. Does this house being so close to the road bother you? Is that okay for you? Does this house being on a main road bother you? Does this house being on a dirt road bother you? Does this house with the backyard backing another backyard, does that bother you? Go through every house and figure out how to get rid of it off the plate. Mm-hmm. Instead of going in and finding all the homes to show, figure out how to eliminate them. And that's what people really appreciate, because their time is money too. And a lot of people just don't have that time to go looking at home after. And there are ones that do want you to be the taxi driver, mm-hmm. or the Uber driver.
They just want to look at everything just because. Right?
Yeah.
Better just go look at it. Well, we got to make sure. So we'll go look at it.
Yeah, with no intention.
Yeah.
No intention.
That's what show homes are for. So look at show homes.
But that's really where those conversations should be going. You know, mm-hmm. when I'm on the phone with somebody, what's most important to you in a home? Mm-hmm. What's most important to you in a neighborhood, in a location, in a town? Where do you most frequent? How mm-hmm. far do you want to be from? How close do you want to be to? Because that really unpacks a lot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. No,
and then just figure out how you can become the expert for that person, for their needs.
Mm-hmm. And if you're familiar with the area that they're in, you can make those recommendations. Well, I recommend this neighborhood or this neighborhood because right? So the location, figuring out narrowed down locations for them first and foremost, unless they're set already on an ideal location. And then based on even their lifestyle, you know, as to why this would be an excellent location, or what struggles you might encounter in this location based on what we've talked about and how you like to enjoy your spare time. Right. So again, it's more of listening and learning more and building those relationships. Like you're going on a first date, learn more about the person. You're asking a whole bunch of questions and engaging in conversation, which is ultimately allowing you to decide, am I going to go on a second date with this person? Right. So it's kind of the same. Just think of it as your first date. You're learning a little bit more and you're offering more. And then it's kind of, you know, do we take it to the next step, which is the next call?
Well, I'm a huge proponent too in having that buyer go out and drive around into the different neighborhoods. And how I kind of twisted that to make it work to my advantage is I know the area. I don't want to persuade you into any particular location. So what I want you to do, every neighborhood has a different feel to it. If I'm riding with you or we go see properties in there, I'm afraid that I may say something that will influence you to feel a different way. So my suggestion is, here is where we're going to be going. Do me a favor and drive through the neighborhoods. Just get the feel. See what it feels like when you're there. And it's so cool because they're like, oh God, like that one didn't feel good at all. And then you just eliminate that neighborhood and you're just, again, process of elimination. And they respect that because they want to know how you feel about a neighborhood. They want to know what your opinion is of a neighborhood, but I don't want to change their opinion and change how they feel about it. Because chances are what they feel about it, they come back to you and it's dead on.
And I find too, it's how I like a neighborhood and how you might like the neighborhood are going to be two totally different things. It's like when somebody asks me if this is good wine, I says, well, I enjoy it, but I can't speak for you. It's your taste. That's gonna tell you if you like that wine. right? But I find it,
Yep.
I really enjoy this wine, but the wines I enjoy, not everyone else enjoys, right? So it's kind of
Exactly.
the same kind of
Why there's
scenario.
so
Yeah.
many varietals.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. So it's, I guess, yeah, and, you know, kind of circling around that it is a lot of influence. And so you want to influence in some ways, obviously, and then some ways you want to step back and let them decide for themselves.
Well, and by stepping back and letting them decide for themselves, it
Like,
tells you a lot about
yeah.
what they are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you to discover, oh, they like that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're okay with that trailer park in the backyard? Okay.
Yeah,
All
it's like
right,
the
then.
houses you walk
I'm just going to turn
into.
you off of anything. So, okay. We
Yeah.
know that landscape is not a priority here.
Yeah, yeah, and then yeah, everyone's taste is different, right? So what I
And
like,
thank God,
yeah,
that's what I always say. There's a house for everybody.
yeah. Can you imagine if we all lived in the same looking house? Like that would be pretty
It
boring.
would be a very mellow world. Yeah.
Hmm. There is actually. I wonder if I could find. It's probably not for sale. This lady, and this is going of like other people's taste versus ours. This lady had her house for sale down a White Rock. Anyone it's on here that's familiar with that area. I think Roy's from that area or from Surrey. There's a house right on the beach, and she's literally got mannequins out on her porch, and then it was for sale. And the whole inside of the house was like you're like in a comic. I don't even know. I can't even like explain. It was like pink velour couches and shag carpets, and like it was just over the top of this is someone's very personal taste that I don't know. I don't know if she sold the house, but whoever bought it, I can guarantee you is not going to keep it the same way, right? But everyone to their own. It was very entertaining to watch the look at the pictures, and you're just like, holy come on, like how could someone? How? Like I just find it like it's just so busy inside that it's like, how do you settle down? How do you just sit and relax? Right? So everyone's different. So it's good. Yeah, it's good advice, just like kind of guiding them and sending them off on their own to also learn more about what what they actually like or what would be of interest to them versus, our comments and what have you, persuading them into something that they're ultimately may not be happy with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Marcy, I see you have your hand up. Did you have a question or that you want to kind of go over, or it would be easier for you to speak and ask your question?
Yeah, I was waiting for her to post something.
Yeah, and I don't know because she didn't have the one comment about the interest rate, so I'm not sure if that was reflective of that. But if you have any additional questions, we can definitely jump on those for you. No? Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to remind everybody, call filters, call filters, call filters.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They are there to make your life super simple. And I'll repeat again, when I was looking at handing off the job that I was doing, I realized I just knew what I was doing when I was in there, but I didn't really have any system.
Mm-hmm.
And the call filters are a way that you don't have to think about who needs to be called to touch in your dashboard. You just go in there and do it.
Yeah.
And if you stay consistent with it, I promise you, you're going to be having all the conversations.
Oh, yeah. It's just saying, it's jumping in. Even if you can only do one call today, do one call. Do something. Something. Doesn't have to be anything significant every day.
What has come up repeatedly on a lot of my most recent trainings is that overthinking of, I don't have time to call my leads because I have to be somewhere in a half hour. And if I sit down and call my leads, what if I get on the phone and then I end up running late? I don't want to cut them short. You know what? Take that chance and get there when you get there, but don't let that be the excuse to not make your calls.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 10 minutes, jump in and make two. Just make two dials. And there's nothing wrong with telling that person, hey, I'm sorry, I have to go to a showing. I just want to make sure that I checked in. They'll respect you for that. And when can I reach back out to you again? What can I be doing for you in the meantime? And that can actually expedite, because if you don't finish a conversation, that can actually expedite the next conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for it to be more closed in than too far out
Mm-hmm.
of a follow up. But just be aware of the overthinking and stop it. Because all the overthinking is doing is talking yourself out of actually making the phone calls and picking up the phone. Because we can't get conversations if we don't pick up the phone, if
Mm-hmm.
we don't make those attempts. If we're not even reaching out via text, we're never going to have the conversations.
And if you only call once, you're also not going to have many times of conversation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. There's a lot of systems I walk in. Yeah, walk into a lot of CRMs where there's one call, no one answers. You called them once. So it's kind of an invalid excuse because you tried them once.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
Well, and just like you open this up, Crystal, right? It's like people just don't answer the phone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a lot more diligence and a lot more consistency to get the people that are going to answer the phone.
Oh, absolutely.
It's no easy way to make money. If it was, everybody would do it.
Oh, yeah.
It is a way to reach people, to get leads, to fill your pipeline. It's not the easiest way to get rich and count your settlements. Because it's meant as a different lead gen. We should all have multiple lead gens coming in, but this is a way of building that pipeline. And the longer you're in business, the more your pipeline's filled, the bigger your business is going to grow. So what are you going to get out of this one? Like it's that lifetime value of a client. What's the lifetime value of a lead? You really start creating that rapport. You should be getting referrals before the closing. There's nothing saying you won't get referrals out of a lead. It happened all the time. I'm not ready to buy, but gosh, you've been so helpful. I'm going to send you over to such and such. But you just got to be asking for it and looking for it.
Cynthia's asking.
Do people answer text more than phone right now? If they don't answer calls, should we try texting them? As far as texting, you do get a lot more responses from text. It's just that text etiquette where we want to be careful with the questions we're asking and how far we're going with the questions. And a big problem that I see, just put one question per text. Don't try to text a whole string and send it over because it's overwhelming. You want people to be able to respond with yes, no's and text versus on a phone. You want to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Act like you're texting a millennial.
There's a lot of people that, I think it's probably a mixed bag and everyone's different, right? And a lot of it will have to do with the age demographic. Because I think as you get, into the people that are, a bit older, they're not as commonly texting people as people that are probably 45 or younger, right?
No, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of, and then where it's like, if you were to text my mom now, she wouldn't respond. I can almost guarantee you that. But she'd probably answer the phone call. Mm-hmm. Right? Even if she didn't recognize the phone, she'd still answer it. Yeah. So I think it's just a really big mixed bag. So it's, there's no right or wrong way or one works better than the other. It's just mix it up. There is more extensive campaigns as well. So when you, I see, Cynthia, I just looked at your account. You're moving forward with our automated system. So when you do, there is actually, when the leads come in, we have a more extensive campaign that actually will run for about, I think it's 3 months, 3 to 4 months, where the text messages are spread out. So they're not every day. You're not being a pest. They're 1 week and then 2 weeks and then 1 week and then 3 weeks. So it's more realistic. The campaign will automatically shut off if you make contact with that person. But that kind of goes back to just keep calling because those texts will eventually go out. Right. So if you're called, they're not answering. So it kind of piggybacks. Those text messages are going to complement the call attempt. And whether they answer the phone or the text, they'll eventually answer one of them. Right?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And you know, when I looked at my buyer agent was a very heavy texter, and she did great with the text messages. But what was funny is she got people that texted, just to your point, Crystal, I got people that answer the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing both, you're going to increase your conversations. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not great at texting. That's just not my forte. I'd rather have a conversation with you in that conversion piece, because when I say I have a realtor, that's really difficult. I can have a conversation and win them over, but through text, it's very difficult. There's a lot of things that can't be done in text and email. So I do attempt to get them on the phone, but don't try to get them on the phone too soon, because if you ask for that phone call, that's when they're going to ghost you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's your personality plays a big part in how you talk to people. Like, it's really dry and boring. Like, God, no one wants to talk to Beverly. She's so boring. I don't want to talk to her. Right. But if you make it fun and exciting and you're like, oh, she's calling, or you have a good time talking to somebody, right? It's an enjoyable conversation each time. Then you're more likely to continue to speak to them. But if somebody calls you, like I've had people where it's just, I don't want to talk to you. It's like your lack of interest in our conversation here is dragging me down. So,
we've all had those.
Yeah. Yes. You're just like, no, done with that. So, yeah, perfect. Awesome. Well, I think that's probably it for today.
Yeah, we need some more takers for next time.
I know. You know, everyone always screams and shouts that they need help. My daughter likes to stand in the background like
that is so funny. Like how,
this face has just appeared somewhere. So everyone, I put in my email, everyone's always wanting help. A lot of people are afraid to be in the spotlight. So we're working on that with a lot of individuals to, kind of build up that little bit of courage to do that. And I always tell everyone, like, if you need or want to be on, just email me. Or if you're not comfortable being on, you can send us some leads where even you've had conversations with them. And we've done in the past, so really where we critique those calls, right? Where you kind of listen to the conversations. No one needs to know who submitted. So if you don't want everyone to know that you're the one that submitted this call, this is you having this conversation, just so you want to remain anonymous, we'll download the call. We won't say who it is, but we'll digest and dissect that call collectively as to, what could have been said differently.
And those are great. I learn from my own calls still.
Because
there's so many ways calls can go. And really your mood is, or some days, like I'll take the phone call, like I'm a little sassy some days, and I just take the phone call a little bit further than I would on other days.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't want to listen to people, so you hold the phone away for a second, and then you're like, yep. Yeah. I do that every time. Not my work calls usually, but other people, where it's just like, okay, I'm kind of done having this conversation, but they still want to keep, and they still just keep talking, and you can't get them off. Anywho, always a pleasure.
Yes.
And
have a super rest of your week, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds great. Thanks, Beverly.
Bye.
Bye.